Welcome to Corvette Today, the show that talks about everything Corvette, with your host, Steve Garrett, lifetime member of the National Corvette Museum, president of the Corvette Club of Kansas City, Missouri, and radio disc jockey at the #1 radio station in Kansas City for over 45 years. Here's Steve Garrett.
Thanks for listening and watching Corvette Today, the show that talks about everything Corvette, and the only current podcast dedicated to Corvette. I'm your host, Steve Garrett. I appreciate you tuning in. Corvette Today is brought to you by Wheelcraft. Want to dress up your Corvette with bright chrome or black chrome wheels? Visit wheelcraft.com and learn about their advanced PVD chrome finishing. They can refinish your wheels or offer a wheel exchange for most models, and it comes with a 5-year warranty. Visit wheelcraft.com today or call them at 833-840-5334. You can listen to Corvette Today on all podcast platforms. You can also listen on your smart device. Just say, "Hey Google," or "Alexa, play the podcast called Corvette Today," and you're connected. And be sure to visit the Corvette Today website. It's CorvetteToday.com. You can access everything there, including the Corvette Today merchandise store. You can also join our Corvette Today Facebook group there as well. Also, make sure you sign up for the Corvette Today emails, notifications, and updates at CorvetteToday.ck.page. And if you like YouTube, be sure to subscribe to our Corvette Today YouTube channel. See all Corvette Today episodes on YouTube as well. And be sure to patronize our flagship sponsors of Corvette Today, MidEngineCorvetteForum.com, the forum that focuses on the new mid-engine C8 Corvette. Meet a lot of fellow Corvette enthusiasts like yourself at MidEngineCorvetteForum.com. Soul Performance Products. Developed and manufactured in the United States, the Soul Performance Products exhaust portfolio has been tailored to elevate the experience of the world's most exciting sports cars, including the latest generation of the Corvette. Soul Performance Products at SOULPP.com, the official performance exhaust of Corvette Today. Aerolarri Wheels, a true forged wheel with over 20 unique styles to choose from for your C8 and wide-body versions of the C7, C6, and C5 Corvette. It's an amazing value, starting at only $23.88 for a set of 4 fully forged wheels. And use the promo code CT111 and get $100 off your purchase. Visit Aerolarri.com. That's AEROLARRI.com. And use the promo code CT111 for your $100 discount. Ciocca Corvettes. If you're a Corvette enthusiast, and I know you are since you're listening and watching Corvette Today, then you need to know about Ciocca Corvette. They're based in Atlantic City, where you can find over 100 new and pre-owned vets on the lot and inbound. Ciocca also ships Corvettes all over the country, custom ordered to your specifications. They're staffed with experienced pros who can answer all your questions. So don't compromise. Visit CioccaCorvette.com. That's CIOCCA Corvette.com and find out more. Chevrolet. Together, let's drive. E5 Wheels. E5 Wheels is a passionate and dedicated wheel company that serves only Corvette. They make spun-forged wheels for your C8, C7, and C6 Corvette. With the best fitment in the industry, E5 Wheels ensures your wheels complement the aesthetics and functionality while optimizing the performance of your Corvette. Visit e5wheels.com or call them at 305-964-7429. And a shout out to Canadian Corvette Forum and Corvette Forum, welcoming Corvette enthusiasts from around the world. My guests on Corvette Today appeared on show number 106 back in April of 2022. These two men developed the record-setting LT6 engine for the C8 Z06. Jordan Lee, the global chief engineer of small block engines for GM, and Dustin Gardner, the assistant chief engineer for small block engines, are back on Corvette Today to talk about their new masterpiece, the LT7 engine for the brand new C8 ZR1. Guys, welcome back to Corvette Today.
Thank you, Steve. I'm very excited to be back on your show. Dustin and I, there's nothing we like talking better than about Corvettes and Corvette engines. And the LT7 is really an exceptional piece, as you saw when we did the reveal and the presentation at NCM a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah, echo that, Steve. Yeah, big thanks. Love being here. Like the LT6, the LT7, something we've been working on for a very long time, very proud of. And it's always really fun for us when we can finally brag about it and have all the Corvette fans out there get all excited to get one of these in their garage.
Absolutely. It's like you've got a secret that you've kept for 6 or 7 years. You can't tell anybody, but now we can finally talk about it, right?
Exactly.
Yeah, Trevor keeps us on a really tight leash. Dustin's a lot better at it than I am, I must admit. Dustin and actually the small block team have a saying that if you want to keep a secret, don't tell Jordan. But I was able to keep this one.
There you go. Well, guys, right off the bat, congratulations on this new LT7 engine. 1,064 horsepower and 828 pound-feet of torque. That's mind-boggling. Did you guys ever think it would get that good?
Whoa. Okay. So Dustin and I are going to answer that one probably independently, but we agree. We didn't set out at 1,064 horsepower. We have a lot of experience with small block engines, a long history of pushrod 2-valve supercharged. We have a really good idea what those engines can make. When we do a new design, we're pretty close on what we expect to get power and torque wise. But the LT6 and the LT7, they were new for us. We've never done such a high performance V8 engine before, a flat plane crank. And we were really pushing the envelope on what our analysis capability was. So we did go for broke. And originally our target was 850 horsepower. And the first engine we put on the dyno, it was loafing along with the wastegates open and it was already there at 850. We knew this thing was going to make a lot more than 850. So it was a long journey to get the actual number that we delivered. We didn't leave anything on the table. Dustin and the team scraped for every horsepower. We have a saying that there's not a horsepower that we don't like. We've never met a horsepower we didn't like. So we just kept pushing and pushing and pushing. And Dustin and the team, and in particular the design system engineers, Yoon Lee and Chad Gilbert, did a phenomenal job delivering tremendous power. Highest horsepower V8 engine ever put into a volume production car globally, not just America, globally.
It's incredible.
Yeah, and the comment on the surprise, right? It's hard to be a surprise when it's a long mountain climb to get there. But as Jordan says, the initial surprise was when we really understood that the system was more capable than we thought to start, when we, were achieving 850 out of the bag with a lot of iterations. It was an extended team. Folks Jordan mentioned, Jake in analysis and Julie West, a bunch of people in the calibration community. We started really sharpening our pencils, and we made some significant hardware changes at that point of view when we realized, if we did X, Y, and Z, we can really swing for the fences on this engine. So we slowly worked our way up in power, ultimately achieved more than our wildest goal was to get to that 4-figure number. But yeah, it was a long mountain climb to get there, but it truly shows the capability of that Gemini architecture.
So, Steve, some really interesting backstory there. One of the most important days for us is going to go down in our history. April 15th, 2024 was the day, and it was a long day that we ran the power certification testing in Pontiac. And it wasn't until late in the evening that the testing was completed. We all had hoped we'd hit 1,000 horsepower. We had an internal target amongst ourselves for 4 digits. And then ideally, we'd want to get 1,026 to be 1 horsepower more than the Dodge Demon 170. If you recall, they make 1,025 horsepower, but only on 85 fuel. And I think they even have a special cal for that.
Yeah.
We wanted this to be a no-nonsense pump gas, more than 1,025. So Dustin, he was IMing me, instant messaging on our internal web through the evening, along with the test engineers, every step of the way as they were inching up on the power. The engine was brutal on the dyno. The dyno really struggled, and that's why the test took so long, because, Dustin, what was it? A few seconds of testing, and then we had to do a 10-minute idle cool off of the dyno? How did that go?
Yeah, so it kind of goes back to another fun story to put to this, to not go too far down the rabbit hole. When we developed the LT5 for the previous generation ZR1, we were breaking dynos in the lab. So the lab bought us 3 1,000 horsepower dynos and said, okay, this will never be a problem again. Obviously, as we inched over that 1,000 horsepower point, we're like, shoot, now the dynos aren't big enough, but we got allowance to basically overpower the dynos for 30, 40 seconds at a time, and then we'd have to back off. So every data point we were running in the power runs, right, you have to go up, stabilize, get the data, finish it before the dyno lets go, and then ramp down and let the dyno cool down. Wow. So what we thought was always going to be the biggest dyno we'd ever need, we, as always in the small block fashion, we beat that.
So it was hard on the dyno. The exhaust stacks, they were over-temping. We had to add water injection to cool the exhaust stacks. I think the emission scrubbers for the cell were hitting their limits, and the cell facilities, people were coming by asking what the heck's going on.
Wow.
The alarms are going off. It was really quite a unique day. For all the Corvette enthusiasts out there, April 15th, it will be a day in history, the 1,064 horsepower day.
That'll be a date to remember for sure, guys. Now, this is the first time a Corvette has been turbocharged. These turbos are huge at 67 millimeters. Talk about how well they work with this engine.
You're talking about the turbine. The compressor is even bigger, 76 millimeters for the compressor, and the turbine is 67. But Dustin, maybe give a little background on how we select those turbos and why they're so big.
Yeah, so what they are is the compressor side is 76 millimeters. The turbine side is 67. That's to get a better balance with, response on the turbine side, and then the flow and compressor throughput that we need on the turbine side of it. So the hot side of it, the turbine side, it's actually an integrated turbo housing. So the turbine itself is part of the exhaust manifold, and it's a custom piece designed for the LT7 in our packaging environment. So what that gives you is that turbine wheel is really close to the exhaust valves, and the runners in the head and the way it directs the air into that turbine housing are definitely optimized for our engine and our vehicle configuration, which really helps with fast spool-up times because you only got a couple inches for that exhaust flow to travel to that turbo. Then on the 76 millimeter compressor side, it's a very large monoscroll turbo. What monoscrolls give you is very good high engine speed read that is high flow boost capability. Because when we knew we were really going to be swinging for this 1,000 horsepower number, we needed a turbo that was going to give us everything we needed at the top end. Now, to help mitigate some of the downsides of big monoscroll turbos is it has a ported inlet shroud that helps with the low turbo speed aerodynamics, which lets a big turbo behave much better at lower engine speeds. So that's a big part of helping pull that peak of the torque curve down to where we get over 800 foot-pounds of torque by 3,000 RPM. So we still have good low engine speed response without sacrificing the top end. And then the other big enablers in the turbocharger assembly to help with turbo lag and response and dynamic driving is we have electric wastegate actuators as well as electric pressure relief valves. So with that, the control guys do a bunch of trick stuff in dynamic driving conditions to keep the turbo speed up even when you're off throttle to virtually eliminate turbo lag. So it really works well as an integrated system, definitely bespoke for the LT7.
It's also worth mentioning, Steve, it's a really large turbo. When we originally went out for sourcing, a lot of the turbo suppliers that we've used on other GM engines wouldn't even quote it. They didn't have anything that was that big of a frame size.
Wow.
So shout out to Borg Warner, who worked with us developing this really large turbo.
Thank you, Borg Warner, for sure. And we'll talk about turbo lag in just a second, guys. Also, head castings have unique ports and larger combustion chambers, too.
Yeah, like so many things on the LT7, I know I've said this again and again, it is not an LT6 with turbos on it. We've touched virtually every component in that engine to optimize it around this boosted setup. So it is a completely unique casting, and that casting is there because of, as you said, the combustion chambers are unique. They're much larger than the LT6s. They're still 100% CNC machined like the LT6s, so the new cylinder heads look like jewelry. And then very unique exhaust ports, where an LT6 will have the exhaust flow very evenly spaced, and the exhaust ports in the head actually start turning the exhaust flow up into the LT6's tubular headers. We're doing the exact opposite with the LT7. We're trying to turn that airflow or exhaust flow down and together to point it right at that turbine wheel. So even the outside cylinder's exhaust ports actually angle inward and down. Once again, trying to bring all that flow together in a very short distance, directed right at the turbine wheel.
So, Steve, a big takeaway for you is that the LT7 was engineered to be a very optimized turbo engine.
Absolutely.
Dustin keeps mentioning it. It's not an LT6, even though they share basic configuration and architecture for the big parts, like the block and the crank train. All the other things that were optimized for turbo operation was done for LT7.
That's awesome. Guys, let's talk about the intake system as well, because I know that was tuned for those twin turbos, wasn't it?
Oh, yeah.
As you guys know, the LT6 has a very large intake manifold, and that's done to get all the naturally aspirated high engine speed tuning that gives that engine the power and efficiency it has. We're looking to do the exact opposite with the LT7. The intake manifold is isolated left to right, and the intake volume is about 60% less than the LT6 because you want a lot less air to compress. Once again, helping with turbo lag, just getting into base engine design there. So the goals of the manifold are very different, and that's why they look so different. The other thing is that intake manifold also packages a secondary fuel system as well, which I think you plan to talk about in depth a little bit later as well, right?
Right. Yeah, definitely. All right, guys, let's talk about turbo lag because that's always been the knock on turbos. You've created this engine with minimal or no turbo lag whatsoever. How did you guys overcome turbo lag?
So to break that down into kind of the three different areas you can have it, right? So from a standstill, you always have to accelerate the turbo. That's just base physics. So you minimize that with all the things we did with the base engine design. Back to what I was talking about before, that turbine wheel is really close to the exhaust valve with that bespoke integrated Manny turbo design that we have. So you get the exhaust gas to the turbine wheel very fast. and that's going through a ball bearing center housing on the turbo. So what that does is it greatly reduces the friction on that turbo wheel. So any of the energy going into the turbine wheel is going to accelerating. You're not losing it to friction.
Nice.
That helps there as well. Then in addition to that, kind of what I was talking about with the very small intake manifold air volume, that kind of goes into further the two charge air coolers that are on the engine. Those charge air coolers sit right on the cam covers. So the path from the compressor wheel to the charge air cooler is only a few inches. Then it's only a few inches from the outlet of the charge air cooler to the throttle bodies of the intake. So you have very little air to compress and everything is very tight on the engine. As you see on other integrated turbo packages, right, if you have the turbochargers that are further from the engine or remote mounted intercoolers, that's just more air you have to compress, which slows down your boost response time. And then off of a start, where we do dynamically, what we call dynamic boost control. So like in a, call it track driving condition, we all know the C8's chassis controls know when you're in a driving state like that. You go into a braking zone and you tip off the accelerator pedal, you're decelerating, turning, you're still carrying engine speed. But given the electric wastegates and the pressure control valves, we can actually close the wastegates under decel and braking and keep that turbine speed up. And we'll go into a closed loop boost control and we'll hold boost at the back of the throttle body. So when you come out of that braking event and you roll into the throttle, the turbo's already at speed and you already have boost at the throttle body. So it very much behaves like a naturally aspirated engine in those dynamic track driving conditions.
Man, that's amazing, you guys.
Steve, it's worth noting the controls engineers have done a remarkable job coming up with software that does the dynamic boost control and the anti-lag software. I do recall when the car development began, a lot of the performance drivers were complaining it's hard to drive the car fast because the turbo lag is so horrendous to get around corners. It was unpredictable.
Yeah.
And then the controls engineer said, no, just wait. We're going to enable the new software and the boost control. And it was like a miracle. I mean, everybody who's driven the car, even Tony Roma, he's the new chief that took over for Taj when Taj retired. He didn't have a lot of experience with the car. And when he first drove it, he was just astounded that it felt just like a naturally aspirated car.
I think I need to drive it too, guys, just to experience that and give you my honest opinion. Don't you think?
I think you do. Yeah. Trevor will help you out.
That's an awesome deal. That would be fantastic. Now, with these turbos and all the technology in it, they do have to be cooled and oiled too, don't they?
No, absolutely. So both turbos do have dedicated coolant feeds. So that kind of goes around the outside path on the inside of that center bearing housing to keep that bearing housing cool. Then we also have dedicated oiling lines for the same thing to keep that ball bearing. Even though it does have a ball bearing in it for the main shaft bearing interface, that is bathed in oil that we do feed and then actively scavenge away from the engine. The other part to the integrated exhaust manifolds that we told you about to keep the turbos close to the engine ends up mounting them very low to the engine. So with that oiling, we actually have to actively scavenge the oil away from the turbos. And in the LT7, we have a 7th dry stump oiling stage that's completely dedicated to pulling oil back away from the turbos. So you never have any oil stacked up there.
That's pretty fascinating.
I think I mentioned it during my presentation at NCM. That 7th stage was visible. None of the journalists caught that on the LT6. It was there. And we kept talking about a 6-stage pump.
Yeah. Hiding in plain sight, wasn't it, guys? That's funny.
I can't overstate the engineering work that Dustin and his crew did on that loop system. That loop system is the heart of the engine. The turbochargers included, but also the engine performance and its ability to go around tracks extremely fast without any lubrication system issues. Pretty remarkable.
Yeah. Well, guys, let's take our first break. When we come back, we'll talk more about the new LT7 engine for the ZR1 coming up next here on Corvette Today.
We all know that wheels make the car. Wheelcraft's PVD chrome finish in bright chrome or black chrome will take your Corvette to new levels. And it comes with a 5-year warranty. Durability is a defining feature of the Wheelcraft finish. Their PVD chrome is superior to traditional chrome with a finish that is brake dust resistant and cleans effortlessly with soap and water. Wheelcraft offers factory wheel exchange for select C4 through C8 models, or they can apply the PVD finish to your current wheels. No matter what generation you own, Wheelcraft will transform the look of your Corvette. With every Corvette comes a unique story, and Wheelcraft has embraced this idea. When you purchase your new set of wheels, you receive a lifetime membership to the Wheelcraft Pit Crew, granting you access to your own page on Wheelcraft's website, where you can post pictures and tell your Corvette story. Visit our website at wheelcraft.com or call 833-639-4231. Arrive in style with Wheelcraft.
Hey, Corvette lovers, this is Brian Sarr from Intellisense Family Office. You formerly known us as True Wealth & Company. First off, a huge congratulations to Steve Garrett on celebrating 5 amazing years of Corvette Today. We've been proud sponsors every mile of the way. You know the thrill and drive and the pride of ownership, but here's the big question. Do you have the same confidence in managing your wealth? At Intellicence Family Office, we specialize in helping high net worth individuals like you protect, grow, and enjoy their wealth. Whether you're a successful entrepreneur, a professional athlete, or someone who's worked hard to achieve your financial goals, we've got you covered with personalized expert advice. We understand the unique challenges you face and the dreams you have for the future. From advanced tax planning to succession planning, we provide comprehensive services tailored to your needs. Our goal? To give you peace of mind so you can focus on what you love. Ready to take your financial management to the next level? Visit Intellisense.com or reach out to us today at 913-653-8783. Let's drive your financial success together. I'm Brian Sarf, and I look forward to helping you live the dream. Save the wave and see you on the road. Investment advisory services offered through Intellisense Investment Solutions Incorporated, an SEC registered investment advisor.
Rev up your ride with the ultimate upgrade. The Radiator Grill Store is your go-to destination for top-notch C8 Corvette Stingray, Z06, and E-Ray accessories. Elevate your style with custom-painted engine bay covers, sleek front splitters, and side skirts that scream sophistication. Keep your C8 protected with premium Radiator Grill screens. Stand out from the crowd at car shows and beyond. Use code CT10 for an exclusive 10% discount off your total purchase at radiatorgrillstore.com. Don't miss out on turning heads. Upgrade your Corvette today.
For the best in CB Stingray, Z06, and E-Ray aftermarket carbon fiber replacement components and body kits, check out RacingSportConcepts.com or call 1-800-815-3751. Tell them Steve sent you to save 10% with coupon code Corvette Today.
And now, back to Corvette Today with your host and my husband, Steve Garrett.
Hey, thanks for checking out Corvette Today on podcast and YouTube. It's the only current podcast dedicated to Corvette. Corvette Today is brought to you by Wheelcraft. You want your Corvette looking its best, don't you? We'll dress it up with bright chrome or black chrome wheels. Visit wheelcraft.com and learn about their advanced PVD chrome finishing. They can refinish your wheels or do a wheel exchange, and you get a 5-year warranty too. So visit wheelcraft.com today or just give them a call. 833-639-4231. I'm your host, Steve Garrett. With me is Jordan Lee, the Global Chief Engineer of Small Block Engines for General Motors, and Dustin Gardner, the Assistant Chief Engineer for Small Block Engines. We are talking about the already legendary LT7 engine for the upcoming C8 ZR1. Guys, this car is dual injected. There's direct injection as well as port injection. That seems fascinating to me. Tell me more about that.
Yeah, Steve, well, it's there for necessity and other functions. As the team out there knows, we did do something similar to this with the LT5 in the previous generation, ZR1. We did it there only because we needed the added fuel at the top end, where the LT7, like the LT5, definitely needs the added fuel flow. And to start out with a fun fact there, if you can park an LT7 at peak power, it'll consume almost 2 gallons of fuel a minute.
Wow.
So if you think about what you need injection-wise to be able to basically feed it what it needs to make that level of power, it is quite astounding. The added 8 PFI injectors on top of the 8 DI injectors, which are still exhaust side DI like the LT6, are definitely all used at the top end. What is really different and better utilized with the LT7 is we blend those 2 fuel systems throughout the operating range. Even like after catalyst light off, when the engine is idling, we'll completely shut down the direct injection system. That's got a couple good advantages to it. One, it's much quieter at idle to do that. And 2, it helps with emissions to blend in some PFI in the light load operating range. And we do that for quite a bit of driving, where you'll drive on PFI only till we start blending in the DI with load. So it has a lot of NVH emissions as well as peak power benefits to it. So it's a great tool to have in the toolbox with this engine.
Yeah, definitely.
Steve, just another tidbit that as Dustin mentioned, the fuel flow of 2 gallons per minute of peak power. For those who know, Corvettes typically have 18-gallon fuel tanks, so it'll drain the tank in 9 minutes.
Wow.
So Very thirsty. For background for you, why the two fuel systems, like Dustin mentioned, it offers a lot of advantages. But if we tried to do that with one injector, the injector would have to be so large to power 1,064 horsepower that the low-speed, light-load fuel injection capability would be heavily diminished. We wouldn't get the fine control that we wanted for idling and low-speed drive quality. So the two fuel systems was a necessity.
I get it. I understand that now. And guys, you did keep the flat plane crank as well. Talk about how that's better for the LT7 engine rather than the cross plane crank.
Well, Dustin and I are going to talk about this one. There's a lot of misconceptions about flat plane cranks. The cross-plane crank engines also can make a lot of power, and they also have a little less vibration. The beauty of the flat-plane crank, though, and the configuration that we've chosen for the LT7 with a really short stroke, an 80-millimeter stroke, is that it revs voraciously. So even a neutral rev from an idle for an LT6 or even an LT7, it'll tack out to 8,000 RPM extremely fast. And a lot of that's achieved by lightweight connecting rod, optimized piston mass, and a very short stroke at the crankshaft. The beauty of a flat plane, though, is it does help you improve volumetric efficiency. You don't have crosstalk with two cylinders that are doing an intake stroke one after another on the same side of the engine, the same plenum. So it's effectively two four-cylinder engines, and it breathes bank to bank. So you're able to achieve higher volumetric efficiency and more power.
Wow.
So that's the main benefit. Dustin, what are some other intrinsics that you've mentioned that flat plane crank has advantages over?
You kind of already touched on the big ones, right? I mean, we definitely didn't want to give up that, what I always call rev-happy nature that's part of just the DNA of the Gemini engine twins, right? Without that, we would really take a lot of the character that makes these engines fantastic and very emotional and visceral engines to drive. So maintaining that was absolutely needed there. But as you stated, Jordan, the breathing part of it is huge, especially when we're trying to blow these turbos at their upper airflow limit. Having that balanced airflow bank to bank really takes out a lot of other dynamics that you'd have to fight to balance that out. When you have two intake events on the same bank back to back, you really change the way things flow, and we'd have to integrate the two banks together, and we wouldn't be able to do what the split intake enables us. We control the turbos as two independent four cylinders. Another thing that I should have mentioned when we were talking about the turbos in the past, we actually have turbo speed sensors in both turbos. So normally you have to leave a little bit of margin to your max turbo speed when you're predicting it, but we actively measure it. So between the two banks, we can run the turbos right up to their red line because we know where they're at. And because we can operate them independent of each other due to that firing order and intake allows us to do that, which is huge.
See, for your understanding and for the understanding of your fans that are very technically savvy, the turbo speed Dustin's talking about 137,000 RPM. So it's getting up there to maximize the boost is really important. But while a flat plane crank engine can be very rev happy, that's primarily due to the short stroke. So I don't want to give you the misconception that if you did a cross plane crank that's a very short stroke, it could also be quite rev happy.
Got it.
So LT6 flat plane, LT7 with the turbos, as Dustin was explaining, gets to be very complicated if you do a cross plane. To get the right balance and the tuning. And ideally, you want every cylinder to breathe the same amount of air and produce the same amount of power. Turbocharging a cross-plane crank V8, that becomes extremely difficult.
Interesting, guys. And the mind-boggling thing about this engine is that it's got more power than two LS7 engines. That's more power than two C8 Z06s. And that engine, the LS7, was a 7-liter engine. This is 5.5 liters. Wow.
Yeah, Steve, I like to joke that with the LT7, you get 14 liters of Gen 4 Fury.
Oh, God, that's a good way to look at it.
That's awesome, guys.
I like that. I have to remember that one.
Also, the transmission's been fortified to handle all that power, too, hasn't it?
Yeah, as far as the details, I know talking to my transmission counterparts, they did strengthen the shafts and the gears, I think, are a little bit wider. All the ratios are the same, but the transmission had to be hardened. Does you know any other details on what was hardened in the transmission?
Yeah, not to get too far out of my swim lane, but you touched on most of them. Ratios are the same, case is the same, but all the key internals that needed to be beefed up, for lack of a better way to describe it, were to handle the torque. It is a unique transmission to the ZR1 to handle the LT7's capabilities.
Yeah, I would think so, with all that power, for sure. Also, guys, we have extra venting on the outside. Talk real quickly about the vent in the wishbone and then the vent on the top rear quarters, which kind of reminds me of that vent on the shoulder of the C7 Corvette.
Yeah, I guess the easy one is to talk about the split window or the spine on the coupes. And that's kind of exactly what it looks like, right? That's just additional engine compartment chimney venting. So, up high, heat extracts that way. In addition to the great styling throwback and how cool it looks. The interesting ones, as you brought up, Steve, are the ones kind of on the rear quarters.
Yes.
So in referencing those to the previous generation, where those were there for brake cooling, on the ZR1, the additional rear brake cooling are the ones in the wishbones, which are interesting, but those are dedicated to the rear brakes. The ones that are up on top of the hatch at the quarter, those are actually additional air inlets into the fresh air induction system to feed the engine.
Okay.
On all current generation Corvettes, right, we bring in the engine air through the inlets behind the doors by the rear radiators. Mm-hmm. The coupe ZR1s do that, but in addition to that, they bring in additional fresh air up on top of that quarter panel. And the vehicle guys did that because there's actually a good high pressure cool air zone right there. So it doesn't give the engine inherently more air, it gives it access to cooler air.
Oh.
That gives you more time before you get into any thermal sort of derate on track with the coupes there. So we were just trying to give them the best opportunity to grab the coolest air around the car is what those are doing.
That makes sense. And you know what I like the best, guys, is right on the driver information center there on the dash, you have a turbo boost meter. That's so cool.
Yeah, you have a turbo car, you want to be able to see that you're making boost. And I would say in addition to that, driving the car, you're never going to second guess that there's turbos there. When you get into boost, you can hear it and you know it.
And you can feel it too, can't you?
Yeah, so Dustin and I, we both drove ZR1s for a while, for a week each. You don't have time to look at the boost gauge. It's there, but when you met the throttle, you're preoccupied with a lot of other things.
You're just trying to harness the car, aren't you? That's awesome.
Your ears are a very good boost gauge in it. You know when you're making big boost. You can hear it and you can feel it.
I can imagine. Well, guys, let's take our final break. When we come back, we'll talk more about the LT7 engine for the C8 ZR1 coming up next on Corvette Today.
Are you ready for a better insurance policy without the Corvette tax? With Agreed Value Protection, the value of your collector vehicle will never change. Plus, you'll save money. Get a quick quote at ncminsurance.com.
The National Corvette Restorer Society is celebrating its 50th anniversary this year. 50 years of affirming and promoting the preservation and restoration of the Corvette. 50 years as the foremost Corvette collector car organization for building value with its prestigious awards. Have you ever considered joining NCRS? Over 70,000 people have. We're so much more than just the nuts and bolts. The NCRS flight judging program can and often does increase the value of America's sports car by researching and publishing the leading tech manuals and judging guides for the 1953 through 2007 Corvettes, by training the best judges and by hosting local, regional, and national judging events. And when you join, you'll get award-winning magazines like Corvette Restorer and Driveline all throughout the year. Joining is simple and easy. Just go to ncrs.org and sign up. There are NCRS chapters all throughout the U.S. and all around the world. Chances are there's a local chapter near you. So join NCRS today at ncrs.org. We come for the Corvettes. We stay for the friendships made along the way.
When you want to buy a Corvette, or any Chevrolet for that matter, get yours from Hendrick Chevrolet Shawnee Mission, located in Kansas City. Hendrick Chevrolet is the largest Corvette dealership and showroom in the Midwest. With a knowledgeable sales staff and Corvette sales specialists on hand, they'll help you build the Corvette of your dreams, and they ship nationwide. With Corvette certified master mechanics on site and a huge parts department with over 24,000 parts and $2 million in inventory, Hendrick Chevrolet is well equipped to take care of your every need. From sales to service to collision repair, Hendrick Chevrolet has you covered. Visit ChevyUSA.com or call 913-384-1550.
VetFinders.com is the Internet's original Corvette classified ads website, with classified ads starting at just $25. And every ad runs until your Corvette is sold. If you're in the market for a Corvette, VetFinders.com has over 500 Corvettes for sale from all around the USA and Canada, and covering all 8 generations. Visit VetFinders.com, the Internet's destination for buying and selling Corvettes. That's VETTE Finders.com.
And now, back to the only current podcast on Corvettes, Corvette Today, with your host, Steve Garrett.
Thanks again for listening and watching Corvette Today, the show that talks about everything Corvette. Corvette Today is brought to you by Wheelcraft. I know you want your Corvette looking its best. We'll dress it up with bright chrome or black chrome wheels. Visit wheelcraft.com and learn about their advanced PVD chrome finishing. They can refinish your wheels or do a wheel exchange, and you also get a 5-year warranty. So visit wheelcraft.com today or give them a call, 833-639-4231. I'm your host, Steve Garrett. With me are my buddies Jordan Lee, the Global Chief Engineer for Small Block Engines for General Motors, and also Dustin Gardner, the Assistant Chief Engineer for Small Block Engines. We are talking about the already legendary LT7 engine for the upcoming C8 ZR1. Guys, the cool thing about this engine is that it's still built at the Performance Build Center there at the Bowling Green Assembly Plant. How long does it take to build an LT7 engine?
Well, I guess, Steve, to first jump in there about the Performance Build Center, I can't rave about that place and the folks that work there enough. They are the reason we can do engines like the LT6 and 7, given where we traditionally build engines in general and definitely small blocks. There's a lot of manufacturing constraints given the higher volume that those plants run. And having an individual with an engine build cart hand build, it really unties the engineering hands to do a complex engine like this. So yeah, that team there and their passion around it and precision is huge and the only reason we can even talk about engines like this. That being said, to get back at your question, so the LT7s will be built by the same individuals and the same line as the LT6s. They'll be built together. Obviously, there's a little bit more content to an LT7, but ideally, a builder should be able to build an engine in about 4 hours.
Wow.
So ideally, build 2 engines a shift is the goal.
Steve, if you have not been through the Build Center at Bowling Green, you must go. You'll meet some of the finest craftsmen putting engines together that you've ever met. They're so skilled at what they do. They're perfectionists. They take great pride in every single engine they put together. And I think they put their own name. They have a badge attached to the engine with their name on it. And I remember it was quite some time ago, I bought a C8 Z06. And I met the engine builder, who's now kind of a friend of mine. His name is Jason Neal. He told me, I asked him, why did you get into this? And you take such great care. You're such a perfectionist. Every little detail, I've been watching how you put this together.
That's cool.
And he said, I'm going to buy one of these cars one day, Jordan, and it may have my name on it. So I'm going to build every one of them like I'm going to buy it.
That's awesome. That's a great idea. And you know, guys, that Performance Build Center, I've seen from a distance. You still can't get back in there and you can't build your own engine. But hopefully one day they will reopen that option for Corvette buyers, where you can go in with the engine builder themselves and build that engine that is going to go in your car. Even though this engine is a quote-unquote small block, it's a huge engine. How did you fit that engine into a C8?
I'll start by saying that there was a good reason why we never put double overcam engines in front engine Corvettes, because they just don't fit.
Yeah.
They are big, and the mid-engine car allowed us a lot more engine compartment room. We could get wider and we could get taller. So that pretty much took the gloves off on the architecture we wanted to choose to get the most power possible. Steve, before Dustin talks, I think you have seen the rolling chassis.
Yes.
That was at the Corvette Museum.
Mm-hmm.
If you took the time to look carefully, that engine is stuffed into every nook and cranny in that engine compartment. Every line, every wire, every hose.
Yes.
Dustin and his team did just a remarkable job in packaging, which ironically is one of the most difficult things to do in designing new engines, is integrating and packaging them in the vehicle.
Yeah.
Yeah, to jump in there at the beginning of it, right? It's the vehicle architecture of the mid-engine is really what enabled us to do that. You get the question, why turbo over supercharging, right? And the supercharging was the right answer for the previous generation front-engine car, given the compact nature. And as you've seen it, Steve, the width of the LT7 in the ZR1 is so wide. Imagine trying to put that between wheels and then wheels that need to turn.
Right.
So the architecture was a big enabler. And to make this level of power, you really need the efficiency of turbocharging over the supercharging solution, which, as I said, was right for the previous generation. But this generation allowed us to do that there. And as Hadge and company have alluded to in the other reviews, we knew the plan from the beginning for the architecture of the car. And when you look at where the turbos are kind of packaged in those little triangle wedges behind the rear radiators and in front of the rear wheels, that space was always there for the LT7 when we first did the Z06 body style.
Yeah.
So I want to say we could do it because we packaged it from the beginning, but also they could never give us all the space we wanted. So it was definitely a shoehorn exercise. We optimized every millimeter we needed. We moved stuff on the vehicle and on the engine side where we needed to and where we could to enable it. But it was definitely a one-team effort between the vehicle team and the engine team to make this all work. as I said before, with the LT7 being the plan from the beginning, we knew what this engine looked like many, many years ago. So packaging work started a long time ago.
And, that was a question I was going to ask you guys. I know that when you were on Corvette Today with me talking about the LT6 for the Z06, it took you 7 years to develop that engine. And these engines were developed basically side by side. They're the Gemini twins. How long did it take to develop and finish the LT7 if the LT6 took about 6 or 7 years?
As you said, Steve, they started at the exact same time. So we got, 2 more years into the LT7s than we do the LT6s. That being said, we architected the engines and kind of laid everything out together at the same point in time. But obviously the engineering work and focus would have been more LT6 forward at the beginning. The architectures and everything were defined at the same time.
I'd offer up to, Steve, it's a long time. I looked at some of my history files to identify when we actually started working on these engines, and it dates all the way back to 2010.
Wow.
So we're doing analysis and packaging and concepts. We didn't get really serious until 2014.
Okay.
But yeah, it's been a long, long time coming.
It's amazing how far in advance you guys plan out and start working on things like this. It's simply amazing to me. And also, interestingly enough, guys, the ZR1's not going overseas. I know that the center exhaust stays because of not going across the pond. It's a shame people over there won't be able to experience 1,064 horsepower.
Well, we're not ready to state what our future plans are. We're very focused on North America now because that's where the reveal was in the launch.
Right.
But never say never. Things can change, and we haven't revealed any plans yet. And actually, I'm not even privy to what the plans are. But there's a lot of discussions on what we're going to do with our cars.
Yeah. And I know the Corvette team said that the ZR1 is going to go over probably 215 miles an hour. I know testing isn't finished yet. What do you guys guessing top speed on this car is going to be?
Well, I think we're going to eclipse 215 by a pretty nice margin. I wouldn't think it's going to be a couple of tenths or a couple miles per hour. If you look at 1,000 horsepower versus what the C7 did, I think the C7 was 214, 755 horsepower.
Yeah.
It should be pretty good. Trevor swore us to secrecy. Dustin and I already know the number, but we can't tell you.
Okay. Well, that's fair. It's all right. I know testing is still going on.
I can tell you, though, you're going to be very impressed.
I'm already impressed, guys. Just impressing me more is just icing on the cake. Jordan, Dustin, thank you again for taking the time to be back on Corvette Today. When we get a new engine, you guys are coming back on the show. How's that sound?
Sounds great. Anytime, Steve. Anytime you want to talk to us, we're more than happy to do so.
This is always a blast, Steve. You know us and you and your fans. If we can talk about engines with the Corvette fans, we're always down to do that. We can do this all day.
Guys, you have an open invitation into Corvette Today anytime you want. Let me know when that new engine is coming down the pike. Thanks again for listening and watching Corvette Today. And be sure to tell your family, friends, and other Corvette enthusiasts about the Corvette Today show. And thanks to our sponsors, Wheelcraft. Want to dress up your Corvette with bright chrome or black chrome wheels? Visit wheelcraft.com to learn about their advanced PVD chrome finishing. They can refinish your wheels or offer a wheel exchange for most models, and it comes with a 5-year warranty. Visit wheelcraft.com today or call 833-639-4231. Soul Performance Products at SOULPP.com, the official performance exhaust of Corvette Today. Ciocca Corvette at CIOCCA Corvette.com. E5 Wheels at E5Wheels.com. True Wealth and Company at RetireWithTrue.com. Also, Aerolarri Wheels. Get $100 off your purchase with the new promo code CT111 at Aerolarri.com. Racing Sport Concepts at RacingSportConcepts.com. And Hendrick Chevrolet in Kansas City at ChevyUSA.com.
Thanks for checking out Corvette Today on podcast and YouTube. If you'd like to contact Steve with ideas for Corvette Today, you can email him at stevegarrettdj@gmail.com. Garrett has 2 R's and 2 T's. That's stevegarrettdj@gmail.com. Also, sign up for email notifications at corvettetoday.ck.page. Follow Steve and the show on social media on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, and Threads at Steve Garrett DJ. Thanks again for listening and watching Corvette Today.